The Mwakazi estate had never looked more magnificent. Sunlight poured through towering glass windows, spilling across polished marble floors that reflected the elegance of the occasion. White roses lined the aisle in perfect symmetry, their fragrance soft but persistent, blending with the quiet hum of expensive conversations and restrained curiosity. It was meant to be a celebration. A union of power, legacy, and family pride. But beneath the beauty of it all, something darker lingered, something sharp enough to be felt in every whisper, every glance, every suppressed smile. Because this was no ordinary wedding. At the center of it all sat the groom. Ethan Mwakazi. Still. Composed. Unmoving. Seated in a wheelchair. From a distance, he looked every bit the man he used to be, broad shoulders, sharp features, dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that spoke of wealth and authority. But as soon as the eye dropped just slightly, the illusion shattered. The chair was impossible to ignore. And the room did not try. They say he used to be unstoppable. What happened to him again? An accident, or something else? And now this. A quiet laugh slipped through a group of guests seated to the side. What kind of woman agrees to marry a man who can't even stand beside her? Either a fool, or someone very clever. Ethan heard everything. He had learned to. Not because he wanted to, but because silence had become louder than words in his life. People rarely spoke to him anymore. They spoke around him, as if his presence didn't require acknowledgement. As if he had already been erased. His fingers rested lightly on the armrests of the chair, steady, controlled. Only the faint tension in his jaw betrayed the storm beneath his calm exterior. Once, he had commanded rooms like this. Once, people stood when he entered. Now. They leaned closer to whisper when he wasn't supposed to hear. Tell me this isn't real. The voice cut through the murmurs, smooth and amused, carrying just enough volume to draw attention without appearing intentional. Ethan didn't turn. He didn't need to. He knew that voice. Liam. His younger brother moved through the aisle with effortless confidence, his presence immediately drawing eyes. Dressed in a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, he carried himself like a man who had never known limitation, never been forced to question his place in the world. His gaze swept over the decorations, the guests, the carefully arranged setting, before settling on Ethan. And then he smiled. Slow. Sharp. Unforgiving. This, Liam said, gesturing lightly around the hall, is actually happening. A few nearby guests shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned in, pretending not to listen while clearly doing exactly that. Ethan's voice, when he spoke, was quiet. Walk away, Liam. Liam's smile widened slightly. Walk, he repeated, tilting his head just enough to let the word settle. You always did have a strange sense of humor. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the crowd. Ethan did not react. From behind Liam, another figure approached, slower, quieter, but no less commanding. Noah. Where Liam's presence was loud and cutting, Noah's was controlled, deliberate. His expression remained calm, but his eyes held something deeper, something that lingered too long, observed too much. He stopped a few steps away from Ethan, his gaze steady. This doesn't have to happen, Noah said. His voice was soft. But it carried. Ethan lifted his eyes, meeting his brother's gaze. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. No woman, Noah continued, stepping closer, chooses a man who cannot stand beside her. The words were not loud. But they landed harder than any shout. Liam circled slightly, his tone light but laced with cruelty. Let's be honest, Ethan, he said, lowering himself just enough to be at eye level. What exactly are you offering her? His eyes dropped deliberately, to the wheelchair. Then rose again. Because whatever it is, it's not enough to make this real. A few guests looked away. Others didn't. Some watched with quiet fascination, drawn to the unfolding humiliation as if it were part of the entertainment. Ethan inhaled slowly. Deep. Measured. For a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes, pain, sharp and fleeting, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. You're done, he asked. His voice was calm. Too calm. Liam let out a soft breath, amused. Not even close. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping, becoming more personal. Cancel the wedding. Ethan's jaw tightened. Save yourself the embarrassment. Noah stepped closer now, his presence colder, more invasive. You think she loves you? He asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer. Noah tilted his head slightly, studying him. Or do you think she's simply playing her part, waiting for the moment she realizes what this life will actually be? A pause. Then. When she does, Noah added softly, she'll regret it. Something shifted inside Ethan. Not visibly. Not dramatically. But enough. And when she regrets it, Noah continued, his voice dipping into something darker, I'll be there. That was it. Not the laughter. Not the whispers. Not the pity disguised as curiosity. That. Ethan's eyes hardened. For the first time, there was something dangerous in them. For once, he said, his voice low but firm, stay away from what's mine. The room went still. Liam blinked, then let out a slow, impressed breath. Yours, he repeated, almost entertained. You really believe that? Before Ethan could respond. The doors opened. The sound silenced everything. Every whisper. Every movement. Every thought. All eyes turned. At the entrance stood the bride. She was draped in white, her figure framed by the soft light pouring in from behind her. The veil covering her face was delicate, almost weightless, revealing nothing clearly, but hinting at everything. For a moment, no one spoke. Even Noah's gaze sharpened. Because suddenly, the question wasn't about Ethan anymore. It was about her. She began to walk forward. Slowly. Gracefully. There was no hesitation in her steps. No visible doubt. No sign of regret. And as she moved down the aisle, something began to change in the room. The whispers faded. The judgment softened. Curiosity turned into something else. Something sharper. Because she didn't look like a woman making a mistake. She looked like a woman making a decision. Ethan watched her approach, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. For the first time that day, he felt uncertain. Not because of the whispers. Not because of his brothers. But because of her. Who was she, really? And why had she chosen him? The distance between them closed. Step by step. Moment by moment. Until finally, she stood before him. Close enough to touch. Close enough to see the faint outline of her lips beneath the veil. The room waited. Held in suspended tension. Because in that moment, one truth echoed in every mind present. Nothing about this marriage made sense. And yet, it was happening. And as Ethan looked up at the woman who had just changed the course of his life, he had no idea that she hadn't come to love him. The wedding ended too quickly. What should have stretched into laughter, music, and celebration dissolved into strained smiles and forced congratulations. Conversations felt hollow, eyes lingered too long, and beneath every polite exchange lay the same unspoken thought. Something was wrong with this marriage. Zara felt it in every glance that followed her as she moved through the hall beside Ethan. Even after the vows were spoken, even after she said, I do, with unwavering calm, the judgment had not faded. If anything, it had deepened. By the time they returned to the Mwakazi mansion, the sun had already begun to dip, leaving behind a quiet, uneasy dusk. The house welcomed them with silence. Not warmth. Not comfort. Silence. Zara stepped inside slowly, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor, her veil now gone, her face fully revealed. She could feel the weight of the house immediately, the way it watched, the way it held its breath. Behind her, Ethan was wheeled in by one of the staff before he dismissed them with a quiet nod. I can manage from here, he said. His voice was calm, but there was something beneath it, fatigue, perhaps, or something heavier. They gathered in the main sitting room. All of them. Ethan. Zara. Liam. Noah. And at the center, like the anchor of it all, Mama Eleanor. No one spoke at first. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, filled with everything that had happened earlier, the humiliation, the tension, the spectacle they had made of what should have been sacred. Zara remained standing, her posture straight, her expression composed, though she could feel their eyes on her again. Studying. Measuring. Waiting. And then Noah moved. It was subtle. Quiet. But deliberate. Before anyone could question it, his hand reached forward and, without warning, lifted Zara's veil completely away from her face. The room froze. Didn't react. But inside, her pulse spiked. For a moment, no one spoke. No one breathed. Because what they saw was not what they expected. She was breathtaking. Not just beautiful, but striking in a way that demanded attention without asking for it. Her features were soft yet defined, her eyes deep and unreadable, her presence commanding in a way that felt almost unreal. Liam let out a low breath, the smirk on his lips fading into something more genuine. "Well," he murmured. "That explains a lot." Noah didn't speak. But his gaze darkened. Deepened. Lingering far longer than it should have. Mama Eleanor sat back slightly, her expression shifting for the first time that evening. Surprise. Then approval. "You are remarkable," she said slowly. Zara inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the words without responding. But the shift in the room was undeniable. The judgment hadn't disappeared. It had simply changed. Now it wasn't why did she agree to marry him. It was, why would a woman like her choose Ethan? And that question was far more dangerous. Liam leaned back in his seat, his gaze never leaving Zara. "Now I'm curious," he said, his tone light but edged with something sharper. "What exactly convinced you to go through with this?" Zara met his eyes. Calm. Steady. Unshaken. "I made a choice," she replied. Liam smiled. "That's not an answer. Not every answer is meant to satisfy you." A pause. Then he laughed. Softly. Genuinely amused. "I like her," he said, glancing briefly at Noah. "She's not as predictable as I thought." Noah's gaze remained fixed on Zara. "You shouldn't assume you understand her," he said quietly. Zara didn't respond. But she felt it. The shift. The attention. The tension building beneath the surface. Ethan, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "That's enough." His voice wasn't loud. But it carried authority. For a moment, even Liam fell quiet. Zara glanced at him then, really looked at him. There was no anger in his expression. No frustration. Just quiet control. "I think we've had enough for one day," Ethan continued. "We should all get some rest." Mama Eleanor nodded. "Yes. This discussion can wait." But the looks exchanged in that room said otherwise. Nothing was waiting. Everything had already begun. Later that night, the house fell into silence once more. Zara lay beside Ethan, staring at the ceiling, her body still, her mind anything but. The events of the day replayed in fragments, the wedding, the humiliation, the unveiling, the way Liam had looked at her, the way Noah had watched her. Nothing about this house felt safe. And yet, she wasn't afraid. That should have worried her. Beside her, Ethan had already fallen asleep, his breathing steady, his face softened by rest. Zara turned slightly, studying him in the dim light. He looked peaceful. Untouched by the chaos that surrounded him. For a brief moment, something unfamiliar stirred in her chest. Not strategy. Not calculation. Something else. She looked away quickly. No. That wasn't part of the plan. The dryness in her throat pulled her from her thoughts. Water. She needed water. Carefully, she slipped out of bed, her movements quiet enough not to wake him. The silk of her nightdress brushed softly against her skin as her feet met the cold floor. She moved toward the door, opened it slowly, and stepped into the corridor. The mansion at night felt different. Quieter. Darker. More honest. Zara walked slowly, her footsteps light, her senses alert. She had just turned toward the staircase, when suddenly a hand grabbed her. Hard. Her body jerked as she was pulled backward, her breath catching sharply as her back collided with a solid chest. Strong. Warm. Unyielding. Easy. The voice was low. Close. Dangerously familiar. Liam. Zara's heart slammed violently against her ribs. "Let go of me," she said, her voice sharp despite the shock. But he didn't. His grip tightened just slightly at her waist, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind her of how easily he could hold her there. "I was waiting for you," he murmured, his breath brushing lightly against her ear. Zara's pulse quickened. Her mind sharpened. Her instinct screamed. This was danger. Real danger. "Wife," he repeated, amused. His eyes locked onto hers. Dark. Hungry. Curious. "You don't feel like a wife," he said quietly. Zara held his gaze, refusing to look away. "And you don't act like a brother," she replied. For a moment, something shifted. Then Liam smiled. Slow. Dangerous. "Good," he said. Because in that moment, both of them knew. This wasn't just a mistake waiting to happen. Morning came too quickly. Zara hadn't slept. Not really. Her body had rested, but her mind had refused to surrender. Every time she closed her eyes, the night replayed itself, the sudden grip at her waist, Liam's voice low against her ear, the heat of his presence far too close, far too real. And the worst part? She hadn't been afraid. That realization followed her into the morning like a shadow. She stood before the mirror, adjusting the sleeve of her dress with steady fingers, her reflection calm, composed, almost untouched. But beneath that stillness, something restless lingered, something she could not afford to ignore. This house was dangerous. Not because of what was obvious, but because of what it awakened. A soft knock came at the door. "Breakfast is ready," a maid said from the other side. Zara took one last look at herself, her expression sharpening just slightly. Then she turned away. The dining room was already occupied when she arrived. The long table gleamed under the morning light, set with precision, silverware aligned perfectly, plates untouched, coffee steaming gently in delicate cups. Everything looked normal. But the people seated around it made it anything but. Liam sat lazily in his chair, one arm draped over the backrest, his posture relaxed in a way that felt intentional. His gaze lifted the moment Zara entered, and just like that, the air shifted. That same smile touched his lips. Slow. Knowing. As if the night before had not been an accident, but a beginning. But inside, her pulse betrayed her. Noah sat at the far end of the table, quiet as always. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't relaxed. He was watching. Closely. Carefully. His eyes moved from Zara to Liam. And something unreadable passed through them. Ethan was already seated. Waiting. When Zara reached his side, he looked up at her, not with suspicion, not with doubt, but with quiet warmth that felt almost undeserved. "Good morning," he said. Zara nodded slightly. "Good morning." She took her seat beside him. And just like that, the table was complete. For a moment, no one spoke. The faint clink of cutlery filled the silence as breakfast began, but it wasn't peaceful. It was controlled. Measured. Like everyone was waiting for something. Then Noah cleared his throat. The sound was soft, but it cut through the room instantly. He didn't look at Zara. He looked straight at Ethan. "Ethan," he began, his voice calm, almost casual, "how was your wedding night?" The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. The ripple was immediate. A few servants froze momentarily before pretending not to listen. Liam's lips twitched. Somewhere down the table, a quiet laugh slipped out, quickly stifled. Zara felt the shift instantly. The tension. It wasn't curiosity. It was humiliation. Her fingers tightened slightly around her fork, though her face remained composed. Ethan didn't respond immediately. For a brief moment, the silence stretched, thick, uncomfortable, exposing. Then he spoke. It was fine. Short. Controlled. Unrevealing. Liam let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head slightly as if amused by the simplicity of the answer. "Just fine," he murmured under his breath. Zara's gaze lowered briefly to her plate. Not in submission. In control. And then. She felt it. A touch. Light. Deliberate. Her foot. Under the table. Her body stilled instantly. She didn't look up. Didn't react. But she knew. Liam. His leg had extended forward, brushing against hers as though by accident. But nothing about it felt accidental. Slowly. He pressed just slightly. Testing. Zara's breath caught, barely noticeable, but enough for her to feel it. Her instincts screamed to pull away. To create distance. To shut it down. But she didn't. Not immediately. Across from her, Liam met her eyes. And winked. That same infuriating confidence lingered in his expression, like he already knew the effect he had. Zara held his gaze. Calm. Steady. Unshaken. Then. Very slightly. She shifted her foot. Not away. Just enough to let the contact remain. Liam's smile deepened. At the far end of the table, Noah had stopped eating. His gaze had sharpened, his attention no longer subtle. He had noticed. Of course he had. The air changed. Again. And then. Slam. Mama Eleanor's hand struck the table hard enough to rattle the cutlery. The sharp sound snapped through the room like a whip. "Mind your manners." Her voice was calm. But firm. Absolute. The room fell silent instantly. Her gaze moved slowly across the table, settling briefly on Liam, then Noah, before returning to Ethan. "We are here to eat," she continued. "Not to entertain childish behavior." Liam leaned back slightly, raising his hands in mock surrender. Noah lowered his gaze. But neither of them spoke. Zara slowly withdrew her foot. This time. Liam didn't stop her. But his eyes never left her. Mama Eleanor's expression softened slightly as she turned her attention toward Ethan and Zara. "You should not concern yourselves with unnecessary distractions," she said. "Focus on what matters." There was a pause. A brief moment where it seemed the tension might dissolve. Then. She added, almost casually. "I cannot wait to hold my grandchild." The effect was immediate. Silence. Deep. Heavy. Unavoidable. Her breath caught, just slightly. Across the table. Liam's smirk returned. Darker this time. More dangerous. Noah's gaze lifted again. Sharp. Focused. Unrelenting. Didn't speak. But Zara felt it. The weight of expectation. The pressure of something far greater than the tension already suffocating the room. A child. The word lingered in her mind, heavy with implication. Because suddenly. This wasn't just about power. Or manipulation. Or survival. This was something deeper. The rest of the morning passed, but nothing truly settled. Zara excused herself from the table the moment it became polite to do so, her composure intact, her steps unhurried. To anyone watching, she looked unaffected, graceful, distant, above the tension that had filled the room. But the moment she stepped into the corridor and the doors closed behind her, she exhaled. Slowly. Deeply. As if she had been holding her breath the entire time. This house was not normal. Not in the way people spoke. Not in the way they looked at each other. Not in the way silence carried more meaning than words. Every interaction felt like a test. Every glance like a move in a game she had only just begun to understand. She walked without direction at first, her fingers brushing lightly against the cold wall as she tried to steady her thoughts. Liam. Noah. Ethan. 3 men. 3 very different dangers. Ethan was quiet. Too quiet. There was something about him that didn't match the picture everyone else painted. He was not weak, not in the way they claimed. If anything, his silence felt intentional, like a man who had learned to survive by watching instead of speaking. That made him unpredictable. Noah was worse. Controlled. The kind of man who didn't act quickly, but when he did, it would matter. His words at the table still lingered in her mind, sharp and deliberate. There had been no humor in them, no playfulness. Only intention. And Liam. Zara slowed her steps. Her breath shifted. Liam was different. Not subtle. Not patient. But dangerously direct. He didn't hide what he wanted. He didn't pretend. And that made him the most difficult to manage. Because he didn't give her time to think. Thinking about me already. His voice came from behind her, smooth and unhurried, as though he had been there all along. Zara didn't turn immediately. She closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. Then she faced him. Liam stood a few steps away, his sleeves rolled slightly, his posture relaxed in a way that felt almost careless. But his eyes were anything but. "I didn't realize you had a habit of appearing uninvited," she said calmly. A faint smile touched his lips as he took a step closer. "I prefer perfect timing," he replied. Zara didn't move. Didn't step back. But she was aware now, of the space between them, of the way it felt smaller than it should have. "You should be careful," she said. "People might misunderstand." Liam tilted his head slightly, studying her. "And what exactly would they misunderstand?" he asked. Zara held his gaze. "That you're crossing a line." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Liam smiled. Not amused. Not mocking. Something else. "Maybe I don't mind crossing it." The words lingered. Heavy. Deliberate. Zara's pulse quickened, but her expression remained unchanged. "You should," she replied. "Some lines exist for a reason." Liam took another step closer. Now the distance between them was barely there. Not touching. But close enough to feel. "And some lines," he said quietly, "exist just to see who's bold enough to ignore them." Zara felt it then. That pull. That dangerous, subtle shift in the air that made everything feel sharper, more intense. She should walk away. She knew that. She felt that. But she didn't. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her voice lowering just enough to match his. "And which one are you?" she asked. "Bold, or reckless?" Liam's gaze dropped briefly, to her lips, then back to her eyes. "Depends," he murmured. "Do you want me to be careful, or interesting?" Zara's breath caught. Just slightly. But he noticed. Of course he did. "You're dangerous," she said quietly. "And yet," he replied, his voice softer now, closer, "you're still here." That was the moment. The one where everything could have ended. The one where she could have stepped back, created distance, regained control. But instead, she stepped forward. Just slightly. Enough to close the gap. Liam stilled. Not expecting that. Zara lifted her hand slowly, placing it lightly against his chest. She felt the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her palm, strong, unwavering. "Real." "Maybe," she said softly, "I don't mind danger." The shift was immediate. Electric. Liam's breathing changed. His gaze darkened. And for the first time, he didn't speak. For a brief moment, the world outside that corridor seemed to disappear. No house. No expectations. No consequences. Just tension. Pure and unfiltered. Then, a voice. Careful. Zara's hand dropped instantly. She stepped back. Liam turned slightly, already knowing. Noah stood at the end of the corridor. Still. Silent. Watching. His gaze moved from Liam to Zara. Slowly. Taking in the distance between them. The tension still lingering. The silence that said too much. "You're getting careless," Noah said quietly. Liam didn't react immediately. He slipped his hands into his pockets, his posture returning to something casual. "Or maybe I'm just honest," he replied. Noah's expression didn't change. But something in his eyes darkened. "Honesty doesn't excuse stupidity," he said. The tension shifted again. Sharper now. More dangerous. Zara said nothing. She couldn't. Because suddenly, this wasn't just tension anymore. It was rivalry. And she was at the center of it. Noah's gaze settled on her again. "You shouldn't be alone," he said. Zara met his eyes. Calm. Unapologetic. "I wasn't." A pause. Then she turned. And walked away. This time. She didn't look back. But she felt them. Both of them. Watching. Waiting. And as she disappeared down the corridor, her expression slowly changed. The calm. The softness. The restraint. All of it faded. Replaced by something sharper. Something more intentional. Because now she understood. Avoiding them wouldn't work. Ignoring them wouldn't work. But using them. That could. And if she was going to survive this house. If she was going to win. Then she wouldn't just play the game. By midday, the mansion had settled into a deceptive calm. Servants moved quietly through the halls, curtains swayed gently in the afternoon breeze, and sunlight stretched lazily across the floors as if nothing in this house carried tension. But Zara knew better. This place didn't calm down. It waited. She had spent the late morning in her room, not resting, but thinking. Every moment since the wedding had sharpened her awareness. Every word spoken at the table, every look exchanged in the corridors, it all pointed to one undeniable truth. This was not just a family divided by rivalry. This was a battlefield. And she had walked right into the center of it. A soft knock broke her thoughts. "Madam," a maid's voice came through the door, "Master Noah asked to see you." Zara stilled. Just for a moment. Of course he had. She rose slowly, smoothing her dress as her expression returned to calm. But her mind had already shifted, alert and precise. Noah didn't act without reason. And he certainly didn't summon people casually. "Where is he?" she asked. Zara nodded once. "I'll come." The walk to the study felt longer than it should have. The corridors were quiet, almost too quiet, as though the house itself was aware of what waited ahead. When she reached the door, she paused, not out of hesitation, but awareness. Then she knocked once. "Come in." His voice was low. Controlled. Unreadable. Zara opened the door and stepped inside. The study was dimly lit despite the daylight outside, heavy curtains partially drawn, casting shadows across the shelves of books and the large desk positioned at the center. Noah stood near the window. Waiting. He didn't turn immediately. Instead, he spoke. "You shouldn't walk so freely in this house." Zara closed the door behind her, her movements calm. "And why is that?" she asked. Only then did he turn. Slowly. His gaze found hers instantly. And held. "Because not everyone here has good intentions," he said. Zara tilted her head slightly. And you do? A faint shift crossed his expression. Not quite a smile. Not quite amusement. I'm honest about mine, he replied. Silence settled between them. Heavy. Measured. Zara took a few steps forward, stopping just short of the desk. Then be honest now, she said. Why did you call me here? Noah studied her. Not casually. Not lightly. But deeply, as though he were searching for something beneath the surface. You don't belong here, he said finally. The words were unexpected. Not accusatory. Not mocking. Just, certain. Zara didn't react immediately. And yet, she said, her voice steady, I'm here. Noah's gaze darkened slightly. That's exactly what concerns me. A pause. Then he stepped closer. Not too close. But close enough to shift the space between them. You're not what you pretend to be, he continued. Zara held his gaze. And what exactly do I pretend to be? Noah's eyes moved slowly over her face, as though committing every detail to memory. Innocent, he said. Zara almost smiled. That sounds like an assumption, she replied. No, Noah said quietly. It's an observation. The tension between them thickened. Not loud. Not explosive. But sharp. You watch too much, Zara said. And you reveal too much, he countered. Her eyes narrowed slightly. For someone who barely speaks, she said, you seem very certain about me. Noah took another step closer. Now the distance was almost gone. I've seen you before, he said. Zara's breath paused. Just for a fraction of a second. But he caught it. Not here, he added. Before this. Her mind moved quickly. Too quickly. You're mistaken, she said calmly. Noah shook his head once. No. His voice was quiet. But absolute. I don't forget faces, he continued. Especially not ones like yours. The air shifted again. Heavier now. Closer to something dangerous. And what kind of face is that? Zara asked. Noah didn't hesitate. One that doesn't belong to someone else. The meaning behind the words settled slowly. Deliberately. Zara's pulse quickened. But her expression didn't change. You're crossing a line, she said quietly. Noah's gaze didn't waver. You think lines matter here? A pause. Then. His voice dropped. Lower. More personal. You married the wrong brother. The words hit differently. Not like Liam's teasing. Not like the morning's humiliation. This was something else. Something darker. More intentional. Zara stepped back slightly. Not out of fear. But to regain space. Control. That's not your decision, she said. No, Noah agreed. But it can become my reality. Silence fell again. This time heavier. More suffocating. Zara studied him carefully now. Really studied him. Liam was obvious. Easy to read. Easy to predict. But Noah. Noah was something else entirely. You're dangerous, she said finally. Noah's expression didn't change. I don't pretend otherwise. Another pause. Then. He added, softer this time. But neither do you. The words lingered. Closer to truth than she liked. Zara exhaled slowly. Then turned. I think this conversation is over, she said. Noah didn't stop her. Didn't move. Didn't speak. But as she reached the door. You won't be able to play both sides for long. Zara's hand stilled on the handle. And when you choose, he continued, choose carefully. She didn't turn back. Didn't respond. But as she stepped out into the corridor, one thing was clear. Noah wasn't just watching her. He was waiting. Waiting for her to make a mistake. Waiting for her to slip. Waiting for her to choose. And for the first time, Zara felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. Not fear, but pressure. Because this wasn't just a game anymore. It was becoming something far more dangerous. The air in the mansion felt heavier that evening. Not visibly. Not in a way anyone could point to. But Zara felt it the moment she stepped back into her room. It clung to her skin, settled into her thoughts, lingered in the quiet spaces between her breaths. Noah's words hadn't left her. You won't be able to play both sides for long. She moved toward the window, pushing the curtain aside slightly as her gaze drifted over the vast estate outside. Everything looked peaceful from a distance, orderly, controlled, untouched. A lie. Her mind was working faster now, sharper than before. Liam's boldness. Noah's suspicion. Ethan's quiet watchfulness. 3 different currents pulling in different directions. And somewhere in the middle. Her. Zara exhaled slowly and turned away from the window. She needed clarity. Not emotion. Not reaction. Clarity. The faint sound of voices reached her then. Low. Muffled. But unmistakable. Zara stilled. Her head tilted slightly, listening. The voices weren't coming from inside her room. They were outside. Down the corridor. Her instincts sharpened instantly. Carefully, she moved toward the door, opening it just enough to slip into the hallway without making a sound. The mansion was quiet, the evening settling in, shadows stretching long across the polished floors. The voices were clearer now. Familiar. Liam. And Noah. Zara's pulse quickened. She moved slowly, her steps light, controlled, until she reached the corner where the corridor turned toward the study. The door was slightly ajar. Light spilled faintly into the hallway. She stopped just before it. Hidden from view. Listening. This isn't working. Liam's voice was lower than usual, stripped of its usual playfulness. Noah responded, calm but firm. It was never supposed to be easy. Zara leaned slightly closer, her breath shallow, careful not to make a sound. She's already changing things, Liam continued. You can feel it. A pause. Yes, Noah said. And that's exactly why she's a problem. Zara's fingers tightened slightly at her side. She wasn't part of the plan, Liam added. You said this would be simple. It was simple, Noah replied. Until he brought her into it. Silence fell briefly. Heavy. Loaded. Then Liam spoke again, quieter this time. We should have finished it back then. Zara's heart skipped. Noah didn't respond immediately. That wasn't the agreement, he said finally. Liam let out a sharp breath. Agreement, he repeated. You call leaving him like that an agreement? Zara's chest tightened. Her mind raced. No one expected him to survive the way he did, Noah said. The damage should have been enough. The words landed like a blow. Zara's breath caught, her body going still. They weren't talking about something abstract. They were talking about Ethan. Her thoughts sharpened instantly, her focus narrowing as every piece began to shift into place. You saw the reports, Liam continued. You knew what that fall would do. And it did what it was supposed to do, Noah replied. It removed him from power. A long silence followed. Then. He's still the heir, Liam said, frustration creeping into his voice. Still sitting at the center of everything like nothing changed. Zara felt the cold realization settle in. This wasn't resentment. This wasn't jealousy. This was calculated. And now, Liam added, he has her. The tone shifted again. Darker. More personal. She complicates things, Noah said. She interferes, Liam corrected. You saw her today. She's not weak. No, Noah agreed. She's not. Another pause. Then. She's watching us, Liam said. Zara's heart slammed against her chest. She's observing, Noah replied. Testing. And you're just going to let that happen? Liam asked. Noah's voice dropped. Colder now. No. Silence. Then what's the plan? Liam pressed. A pause. Longer this time. More deliberate. Then. We draw her in. Zara's breath hitched silently. Liam let out a low chuckle. That won't be difficult. Zara's stomach tightened. She's already responding, Liam continued, his tone shifting back into something more familiar, more dangerous. You saw it. I did, Noah said. Another pause. But don't forget, Noah added, quieter now, she's not the only one playing. Zara leaned back slightly, her mind racing. Her pulse was loud in her ears now, her thoughts moving faster than she could fully control. They knew. Not everything. But enough. And worse. They had a plan. A plan that involved her. She needed to move. Now. But just as she began to step back, the floor beneath her shifted slightly. A faint sound. Barely there. But enough. The voices inside stopped instantly. Zara froze. Silence. Complete. Then. Noah. Liam's voice was low. Alert. I heard it. Zara's breath stopped. Footsteps. Approaching. Fast. Her heart slammed violently against her chest as she turned, her mind racing for a solution. There was no time. No space. No cover. The door behind her opened. Zara reacted instantly. She turned. Stepping forward just as Noah appeared. And collided lightly into him. Her hand lifted instinctively, catching his arm as if she had been walking toward the room all along. Oh. Her voice came soft. Controlled. I didn't realize anyone was here. Noah stilled. His eyes locked onto hers. Sharp. Searching. Behind him, Liam stepped into view. His gaze flicked between them. Then. A slow smile curved his lips. Well, he said lightly, this is convenient. Zara held Noah's arm for just a second longer than necessary. Then slowly let go. I was looking for the library, she said calmly. Noah didn't respond immediately. His eyes didn't leave her face. As if trying to read something beneath the surface. The library is the other wing, he said finally. Zara nodded slightly. Then I must have taken a wrong turn. Liam leaned casually against the doorframe, his eyes never leaving her. You seem to take a lot of wrong turns, he said. Zara met his gaze. Unshaken. Only when the path is unclear. A pause. Then. Liam smiled. I could show you the right one. Zara held his gaze for a moment longer. Then. She stepped back. That won't be necessary. And without another word. She turned. And walked away. But she didn't slow down until she reached the far end of the corridor. Didn't breathe properly until she was alone. Her heart was racing now. Her thoughts sharper. Clearer. Because now she knew. This wasn't just about attraction. Or rivalry. This was something far worse. Ethan's accident. Wasn't an accident. And the men she was playing. Were far more dangerous than she had imagined. Zara stopped walking. Her expression slowly hardening. Good. Because that only made one thing clear. If they were planning to draw her in. Zara did not sleep that night. Not because of fear. But because of clarity. She sat at the edge of the bed long after Ethan had fallen asleep, her hands resting loosely in her lap, her gaze fixed on nothing and everything at once. The truth she had overheard replayed in her mind, not as scattered fragments, but as something complete. Cold. Deliberate. Dangerous. Ethan's accident had not been an accident. It had been a decision. A calculation. A move. Her jaw tightened slightly as the realization settled deeper. She had come into this house expecting power struggles, jealousy, emotional manipulation, but this was something else entirely. This was intent. And now she had a choice. Walk away from the danger. Or step into it. Zara exhaled slowly, her gaze shifting to Ethan. He lay on his back, his breathing even, his face softened by sleep in a way that felt almost unfair. In that quiet moment, he didn't look like a man surrounded by betrayal. He looked peaceful. Unaware. Something inside her tightened. Not pity. She looked away. No. She could not afford softness. Not now. If she was going to survive this house, if she was going to uncover the truth fully, she needed control. And control meant one thing. She would play their game. But she would play it better. The next morning. The dining room was quieter than usual. Not peaceful. Just measured. Zara entered alone this time. And immediately. She felt it. Liam's gaze. It found her before she even reached the table, his posture shifting slightly as if her presence alone had altered the room. That same slow smile returned. More subtle this time. More private. Noah was already watching too. But his expression remained unchanged, controlled, unreadable, distant. Good. Zara let her gaze sweep over them both before taking her seat. She didn't rush. Didn't hesitate. She allowed them to look. That was the first move. Liam leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows against the table as if they were simply continuing an unspoken conversation. "Sleep well?" he asked casually. Zara glanced at him. Held his gaze. Then smiled. Softly. "Well enough," she replied. The shift was immediate. Liam stilled for just a second. Not expecting that. Noah noticed too. Of course he did. Zara lowered her gaze again, reaching for her cup as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Because now. She wasn't avoiding them. She was engaging. And that made her unpredictable. Later that afternoon. Zara found him where she expected. The veranda. Liam stood near the railing, a glass in his hand, his attention fixed on the distant view as though nothing in the world required urgency. But the moment Zara stepped into the open space, he turned. Slowly. His eyes locked onto hers. "I was wondering how long it would take," he said. Zara walked toward him, her movements unhurried, her expression calm. "To do what?" she asked. "To come to me." A pause. Zara stopped just a step away. Close enough to feel the shift in the air. Not close enough to touch. "Is that what you think this is?" she asked. Liam's lips curved slightly. "I think," he said, his voice lowering, "you're not as indifferent as you pretend to be." Zara tilted her head slightly. "And if I am? Then you wouldn't be here." Silence settled between them. Heavy. Measured. Then. Zara stepped closer. Liam stilled. Not expecting the distance to disappear so easily. Her hand lifted again. Slow. Intentional. Resting lightly against his chest. She felt it immediately. The steady beat beneath her palm. Strong. Unshaken. Real. Liam's breath shifted. Just slightly. "Maybe," Zara said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm curious." That was all it took. The air changed. Liam's hand moved. Not quickly. Not aggressively. But deliberately. It found her waist. Held her there. This time. She didn't pull away. His gaze dropped briefly to her lips. Then returned. Darker now. "You're dangerous," he murmured. Zara's lips curved faintly. Only when I need to be. For a moment. Neither of them moved. The tension stretched. Pulled tighter. Closer to something that could no longer be ignored. Then. A voice. You shouldn't trust what you don't understand. Zara stepped back instantly. Liam's hand dropped. Noah stood at the entrance to the veranda. Watching. His gaze moved from Liam. To Zara. Slowly. Carefully. Something in his expression had changed. Not suspicion. Not curiosity. Recognition. You're adapting quickly, Noah said. Zara met his gaze. Unshaken. I learn fast, she replied. A pause. Then Noah stepped forward. You'll need to, he said quietly. Liam let out a soft breath, running a hand through his hair as he leaned back against the railing again. Relax, he said. She's just finding her place. Noah didn't respond. His eyes never left Zara. She's not lost, he said. The words lingered. Heavy with meaning. Zara felt it. The shift again. This wasn't just a game anymore. They knew. Not everything. But enough. Good. Because now. She knew something too. They wanted to draw her in. But they weren't the only ones setting the trap. Zara turned slightly, her gaze sweeping over both of them. Calm. Controlled. Intentional. Careful, she said softly. Both men stilled. Not everything you reach for is meant to be taken. Then. She walked away. This time. Without hesitation. Without looking back. But behind her. Both brothers remained still. Watching. Thinking. Because something had changed. She wasn't just reacting anymore. She was playing. And for the first time. They didn't know how far she would go. The afternoon sun lingered longer than usual, casting a quiet gold across the Mwakazi estate. From a distance, everything looked perfect. Untouched. Balanced. But inside the mansion, something had shifted, and Zara could feel it in the way silence had changed. It was no longer empty. It was watching. She didn't go back to her room. Instead, she walked through the east corridor, her pace slow, her thoughts sharper than they had ever been. Every move she had made that day replayed in her mind, measured, intentional, effective. Liam had responded. Noah had noticed. Good. That meant she was exactly where she needed to be. But as she turned the corner toward the private wing, something unexpected caught her attention. A door. Half open. She wouldn't have noticed it on another day. But today. Every detail mattered. Soft light spilled from inside, and for a moment, Zara hesitated. That wing was quieter, more isolated. It wasn't where guests or even most family members spent time. It felt personal. She stepped closer. Then stopped. Inside, Ethan sat alone. Not in the main chair he used downstairs. Not surrounded by servants or structure. Just him. His wheelchair was angled near the window, a file open in his lap, papers resting loosely against his hands. But he wasn't reading. He was staring out. Not absent. Not lost. Just thinking. Zara stood at the doorway longer than she intended. Something about the stillness of the moment held her there. It was different from everything else she had seen in this house. There was no tension here. No performance. No hidden agenda pressing visibly against the air. Just quiet. You can come in. His voice broke the moment gently. Without turning. Without surprise. Zara blinked, then stepped inside, closing the door behind her. I didn't mean to interrupt, she said. You didn't, Ethan replied, finally turning to face her. His gaze was steady. Not suspicious. Not questioning. Just aware. Zara moved further into the room, her eyes taking in the space. It was simpler than the rest of the mansion. Organized. Clean. Functional. A desk, a shelf, a few documents neatly arranged. No unnecessary display. No excess. You spend time here, she said. It's quieter. That made sense. Zara folded her arms loosely, leaning slightly against the edge of the desk. You don't seem like a man who enjoys noise, she added. A faint smile touched his lips. I don't enjoy chaos disguised as conversation. Zara almost smiled. For a moment, neither of them spoke. But unlike the silence she had felt around Liam and Noah, this one didn't feel like a trap. It felt grounded. You've been avoiding them, Ethan said after a moment. Zara's gaze lifted. Have I? Ethan studied her carefully. Not exactly, he said. You've been navigating them. The accuracy of the statement surprised her. But she didn't show it. That sounds like an assumption, she replied. It's an observation, he said calmly. Zara held his gaze. Then. She exhaled lightly. You're more aware than they give you credit for, she said. Ethan's expression didn't change. They assume a lot of things, he replied. Zara's eyes lingered on him for a moment longer. They assume you're weak, she said. Ethan didn't flinch. Didn't react. They've always needed me to be, he said quietly. The words settled deeper than expected. Zara straightened slightly. Why? Ethan leaned back just enough to shift his posture. Because if I'm not, he said, then they have no excuse for what they've done. Zara's breath paused. That was not the answer she expected. She watched him more closely now. Not as part of a plan. Not as part of a strategy. But, genuinely. You don't ask many questions, she said. Ethan's gaze remained steady. I ask the right ones, he replied. A pause. Then. Like why you chose me. Zara's chest tightened. Just slightly. There it was. The question everyone wanted answered. And yet. He didn't ask it like the others. There was no accusation in his tone. No mockery. No assumption. Just quiet curiosity. Zara looked away briefly, her thoughts shifting. Careful. Measured. Does it matter? She asked. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He simply watched her. It matters to them, he said eventually. Zara let out a faint breath. And to you? Another pause. Then. Yes. The honesty in his answer caught her off guard. Not because of the question. But because of the way he said it. Zara turned slightly, her gaze falling toward the window. I made a choice, she said quietly. Ethan didn't interrupt. I wasn't forced, she added. I know, he said. She looked back at him. You do. Ethan nodded once. You don't look like someone who does anything she doesn't want to do. Zara held his gaze. Longer this time. Something shifted in her chest. Not discomfort. Not pressure. Something else. Unfamiliar. You trust too easily, she said. Ethan's expression remained calm. No, he replied. I just don't waste energy doubting everything. Zara almost laughed. That was dangerous. Not Liam's boldness. Not Noah's intensity. This quiet certainty. This steady presence. This refusal to play the same game everyone else was playing. It made him harder to manipulate. And somehow. Harder to ignore. You should be careful, she said. Ethan tilted his head slightly. Of you. Zara didn't answer. For a moment, silence settled again. But this time. It felt different. Not like tension. Not like a game. Like something waiting to be understood. Zara stepped back slightly. I should go, she said. Ethan nodded. Of course. She turned. Walked toward the door. But before she reached it. Zara. She paused. His voice wasn't loud. But it held something that made her stop. She turned back slightly. If you're going to stay in this house, he said quietly, don't let them decide who you are. The words landed deeper than they should have. Zara didn't respond immediately. Then. She gave a small nod. And left. But as she walked back into the corridor, her thoughts weren't as clear as before. Because for the first time, the game she was playing felt complicated. Not because of Liam. Not because of Noah. But because of Ethan. The men everyone had already dismissed. The men they had already broken. The men they had already forgotten. The evening settled over the Mwakazi estate like a slow-moving storm. Not loud. Not obvious. But inevitable. Zara stood by the window in her room, her arms folded loosely, her gaze fixed on the fading light outside. The conversation with Ethan lingered in her mind in a way she hadn't expected. He hadn't questioned her. Hadn't doubted her. Hadn't even tried to corner her with suspicion the way the others had. He had simply seen her. That made him dangerous. In a way she hadn't prepared for. Her reflection stared back at her faintly in the glass, composed, unreadable, steady. But behind it, something was shifting. Something she had spent a long time burying. A memory. She closed her eyes. Just for a second. But it was enough. The past came rushing back. Not this house. Not this life. Another place. Another time. And him. A sharp knock broke the moment. Zara's eyes opened instantly, her expression resetting before she turned toward the door. Yes. It's me. Noah. Her breath paused, just slightly. Then steadied. Come in. The door opened slowly. Noah stepped inside without hesitation, closing it behind him with quiet precision. He didn't speak immediately. Didn't move closer. He simply stood there. Watching her. Zara didn't look away. You've been avoiding me, he said finally. That's not true, she replied calmly. Noah tilted his head slightly. Then what would you call it? Zara turned fully to face him. Being careful. A pause. Something in his expression shifted. Not quite anger. Not quite amusement. Good, he said. Zara frowned slightly. That's not the reaction I expected. Noah stepped forward slowly. Measured. Controlled. It means you're paying attention, he said. The air thickened. Zara crossed her arms slightly, not defensive, just grounding. And what exactly am I supposed to be paying attention to? Noah stopped a few steps away from her. Close enough to feel. Not close enough to touch. Everything, he said. His gaze didn't waver. Didn't soften. And especially, he added, quieter now, what you're pretending not to remember. Zara's breath stilled. For a moment. The room felt smaller. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. Noah didn't move. Didn't react. You do, he replied. Silence stretched. Tight. Unforgiving. Zara's mind moved quickly, searching for an angle, a deflection, but something in his expression told her that wouldn't work. You're mistaken, she said again, more firmly this time. Noah exhaled slowly. Then. He took another step closer. You used to come to the coastal conferences, he said quietly. 3 years ago. Zara's pulse spiked. Her fingers tightened slightly at her side. You stood in the back, he continued. You never spoke much. But you watched everything. The room seemed to tilt slightly. You noticed people others didn't, he added. You listened when no one thought you were paying attention. Zara's chest tightened. Because now. She remembered. Not clearly. Not fully. But enough. And then. He said it. I spoke to you once. Her breath caught. Noah's gaze deepened. Just once, he continued. You barely said anything. But you stayed longer than you needed to. The memory surfaced sharper now. A conversation she had dismissed. A moment she had buried. You left without giving your name, he added. Zara swallowed. And now, Noah said softly, you walk into this house, and expect me to believe you're just a stranger. The silence that followed was heavy. Zara turned away slightly, her mind racing. This wasn't part of the plan. This connection. This recognition. It complicated everything. You're reaching, she said quietly. Noah let out a soft breath. Am I? Zara didn't answer. Because now she knew. He wasn't guessing. He was remembering. And if I am right, Noah continued, his voice dropping, then this isn't just coincidence. Zara turned back to him slowly. Her eyes sharper now. No, she said. The word came before she could stop it. And the moment it left her lips. She knew. She had just confirmed everything. Noah stilled. Then. Very slowly. He smiled. Not like Liam. Not amused. Not playful. Something darker. More certain. I knew it, he murmured. Zara held his gaze. Steady. Unyielding. Then you also know, she said quietly, that you're stepping into something you don't understand. Noah's smile faded slightly. Then explain it, he said. Zara shook her head once. No. A pause. Then she stepped closer. Closing the distance between them. Noah didn't move. You think this gives you power, she said softly. It doesn't. Her voice was calm. But firm. It just makes you more involved than you should be. Noah's gaze darkened. I was already involved, he replied. Zara's breath slowed. Then. She stepped back. This conversation ends here, she said. Noah didn't stop her. But as she reached the door. You didn't come here by accident. Zara paused. And you didn't marry him for nothing, he added. Silence. Zara didn't turn. Whatever you're planning, Noah said quietly, you won't finish it alone. She opened the door. And walked out. But this time. Her steps weren't as steady. Because now. The past wasn't buried anymore. It was awake. And it was starting to bleed into the present. Zara stopped halfway down the corridor, her hand pressing lightly against the wall as her thoughts collided. This was getting complicated. Too complicated. Because now. It wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't just about survival. It was personal. And that was the one thing she had never planned for. The mansion felt different after that night. Not in a way anyone could name. But in the way silence lingered longer than it should, in the way footsteps echoed sharper against the marble, in the way every glance seemed to carry a second meaning beneath it. Zara noticed everything. She had to. Because the moment Noah recognized her, the balance had shifted. What had started as a controlled game was now unpredictable, unstable, dangerous in ways she could no longer fully anticipate. And the worst part? She could feel herself being pulled deeper into it. Morning came, but it brought no relief. The dining table was quieter than usual, yet somehow more suffocating. Conversations were minimal, but tension hung thick between every word that wasn't spoken. Ethan was already seated when Zara arrived. He looked the same as always, composed, distant, unbothered, but there was something different in his eyes this time. He was watching. Not casually. Not passively. But deliberately. Zara felt it immediately. And for the first time, she wondered what exactly he had begun to see. Good morning, she said, her voice steady as she took her seat beside him. Ethan inclined his head slightly. Morning. Simple. Calm. But not unaware. Across the table, Liam leaned back in his chair, his gaze already fixed on her. There was no subtlety now. No pretense. He wasn't hiding his interest anymore. And Noah. He wasn't even pretending not to know. His eyes met hers without hesitation, without question. He knew. And now he was waiting. Zara picked up her cup slowly, giving herself a moment to think, to steady, to regain control over something that had begun slipping through her fingers. She couldn't afford mistakes now. Not with Noah watching her every move. Not with Liam pushing boundaries without hesitation. Strange, Liam said suddenly, breaking the silence. Zara didn't look up. What is? She asked calmly. Liam's smile was slow, deliberate. You seem different today. Her gaze lifted then. Steady. Unbothered. Different how? Liam tilted his head slightly, studying her. Less careful, he said. A pause. Zara held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then. She smiled. Or maybe, she said softly, you're just paying more attention. The response landed. Exactly as intended. Liam's expression shifted, just slightly, but enough to show interest, intrigue, something deeper than simple attraction. Noah didn't react. But his eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Ethan, however, noticed everything. Zara could feel it. The way his silence had changed. The way his stillness no longer felt passive. He was watching her now. Not just the room. Not just the tension. Her. That unsettled her more than she expected. Because unlike Liam or Noah, Ethan didn't act on impulse. He waited. And men who waited were the most dangerous of all. The rest of breakfast passed without further confrontation, but the tension never eased. It simply shifted. Moved. Changed shape. By midday, Zara found herself needing distance. Not from the house, but from the pressure building inside it. She stepped outside, letting the warm air brush against her skin as she walked toward the garden. The open space helped, slightly, but her thoughts remained tangled, heavy with everything she had learned. Everything she had triggered. You're thinking too much. The voice came from behind her. Zara closed her eyes briefly before turning. Liam. Of course. He walked toward her with the same ease he carried everywhere, his presence filling the space around him without effort. And you're following me again, she replied. He smiled. I told you, he said. I prefer to call it timing. Zara didn't move away. Didn't step closer either. She simply stood her ground. You should be more careful, she said. People are starting to notice. Liam stopped just in front of her. Close. Too close. Let them, he said quietly. Zara's pulse shifted. That doesn't bother you, she asked. Liam's gaze dropped briefly, then returned. No, he said. Does it bother you? Zara didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was complicated. Before she could respond, another voice cut through the moment. It should. Noah. Zara's body stilled slightly. He stood a few steps away, his presence quieter than Liam's, but heavier. You're getting reckless, Noah said, his gaze moving between them. Liam let out a soft breath, clearly unimpressed. Or maybe I'm just not hiding it anymore. Noah's expression hardened slightly. That's not strength, he said. That's carelessness. Liam took a step closer to Zara. Deliberate. Provoking. Or maybe, he replied, you're just too slow to act. The tension snapped tighter. Zara felt it immediately. The shift. The competition. This wasn't subtle anymore. This was open. Dangerous. You're both making assumptions, she said calmly. Both men turned to her. Zara held their gaze. Unshaken. You think this is about you, she continued. It's not. A pause. Then. She stepped back. Creating distance. Control. You're not the only ones who understand how to play this game. The words landed heavily. Liam's smile returned. Slower. More intrigued. Noah didn't smile at all. But something in his eyes shifted. Recognition. Zara turned. And walked away. This time. Without hesitation. Without looking back. But as she moved further from them, her thoughts weren't calm. They weren't clear. They were louder. Because something had changed. The balance. The control. The distance she had carefully maintained. It was cracking. Not because of Liam. Not because of Noah. But because Ethan was no longer just watching from the sidelines. He was starting to see. And when he did, everything would break. The night arrived heavier than the last. Not with noise. Not with confrontation. But with something quieter, something that pressed against Zara's chest like an unanswered question she could no longer ignore. She stood alone in the West Wing corridor, the dim lights casting long shadows along the walls. The house was asleep, or pretending to be, but Zara had come to understand that nothing in the Mwakazi mansion truly rested. Not secrets. Not intentions. Not people. Her steps were slow, deliberate, her mind tracing the fragments she had gathered piece by piece. The whispers. The tension. The conversation she overheard. We should have finished it back then. The words echoed again, louder now, clearer. More dangerous. Zara's jaw tightened. This was no longer suspicion. No longer theory. It was truth. Ethan's accident had been planned. She reached the study door. Paused. Then pushed it open. The room was empty. But not untouched. Papers lay scattered across the desk, not carelessly, but in a way that suggested interruption. A file sat open, its contents partially exposed. Zara stepped inside, her pulse steady, her thoughts sharper than ever. She didn't hesitate. Her fingers moved to the file. Opened it. Medical reports. Dates. Observations. Her eyes scanned quickly, absorbing everything. Severe spinal trauma, delayed treatment, complications due to interference. Her breath slowed. Her focus narrowed. This wasn't just an accident report. It was a timeline. And something about it didn't add up. The initial injury was serious, but not irreversible. Not immediately. The damage had worsened later. Because of delays. Because of intervention. Because someone. Zara's fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. Someone had made sure he didn't recover. A soft sound behind her made her freeze. She turned. Ethan stood at the doorway. His gaze moved from her to the file in her hands. And for the first time, there was no calm in his eyes. Only awareness. You shouldn't be in here. His voice was quiet. But firm. Zara didn't drop the file. Didn't step back. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. Ethan didn't respond immediately. His gaze didn't waver. Tell you what. Zara lifted the papers slightly. That it wasn't just an accident. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Ethan stepped inside slowly, closing the door behind him. You shouldn't be looking into things that don't concern you, he said. Zara let out a soft breath. They concern me now. Their eyes met. For a moment, something shifted between them. Not tension. Not anger. Truth. You already knew, Zara said quietly. It wasn't a question. Ethan's expression didn't change. I suspected. Zara shook her head slightly. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed. It's worse. A pause. Because suspicion without proof, he continued, his voice lowering, forces you to live with it. Zara stepped closer. You have proof now, she said. Ethan's gaze dropped briefly to the file. Then back to her. No, he said. I have pieces. Zara's eyes sharpened. You're protecting them. Ethan didn't react. I'm protecting myself, he replied. The words landed harder than she expected. Zara studied him carefully now. You think staying quiet will keep you safe? She asked. Ethan let out a quiet breath. I think acting without certainty will destroy everything faster. Zara felt frustration rise. They tried to destroy you already. Ethan's gaze darkened slightly. And they failed. A pause. Zara shook her head. They didn't fail, she said quietly. They just didn't finish. The silence that followed was sharp. Ethan didn't look away this time. You shouldn't be involved in this, he said. Zara laughed softly. Not amused. Not lightly. I already am. Another pause. Then. She stepped closer. Whether you admit it or not, she continued, her voice steady, this isn't over. Ethan's eyes searched hers. And what exactly are you planning to do about it? Zara held his gaze. Find the truth. Ethan's expression didn't change. You think that will fix anything? Zara didn't hesitate. No, she said. A beat. But it will end something. Silence. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then. Ethan looked away. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. Zara's chest tightened. Not because of the words. But because of what they meant. He wasn't afraid of the truth. Maybe not, she said. A pause. But I'm still here. The words lingered. Ethan looked at her again. Longer this time. As if trying to understand something he hadn't expected. Something he wasn't prepared for. Then. He spoke. Be careful, Zara. Her lips curved faintly. You've said that before. Ethan shook his head once. No, he said quietly. This time I mean it differently. Zara didn't respond. But she understood. Because now. The truth wasn't hidden anymore. It was alive. And it was moving. And sooner or later. It would demand consequences. Zara turned. Walked toward the door. But as she stepped out into the corridor. Her expression changed. Sharpened. Focused. Resolved. Because now she had what she needed. Not just suspicion. Not just instinct. But confirmation. And that changed everything. The house had grown quieter. Not peaceful, never peaceful, but quieter in the way a storm holds its breath before breaking. Even the servants moved more carefully now, their footsteps softer, their voices lowered, as if they sensed something approaching but dared not name it. Zara felt it too. Only she wasn't waiting for it. She was walking straight toward it. By late afternoon, the sun had softened into a dull glow, casting long shadows across the garden. Zara stood near the far end of the veranda, her fingers resting lightly on the railing, her thoughts sharper than they had ever been. The truth was no longer hidden. Ethan knew. She knew. And somewhere within the walls of this house, two men were still pretending control. A faint sound behind her broke the stillness. She didn't turn immediately. She already knew. You've been difficult to find. Liam. Zara exhaled slowly, then turned. He stood a few steps away, his presence as effortless as ever, though there was something different in his expression now, less playful, more focused. More intentional. I wasn't aware you were looking, she replied. I always am, he said simply. There was no teasing in his voice this time. No humor. Zara tilted her head slightly, studying him. And what exactly are you hoping to find? Liam stepped closer. Not abruptly. Not aggressively. But with purpose. The truth, he said. Zara's lips curved faintly. That's a dangerous thing to look for in this house. Liam stopped just in front of her. Close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, the quiet intensity in his gaze. I think you already know that, he said. A pause settled between them. Zara held his gaze. Steady. Unshaken. And I think, she replied, you already know more than you're saying. Something flickered in his eyes. Not surprise. Recognition. Maybe, he admitted. The honesty caught her off guard. Just slightly. You've changed, he added quietly. Zara didn't look away. Have I? Liam's gaze moved slowly over her face. Yesterday, you were careful, he said. Today, you're not hiding it anymore. Zara's pulse shifted. And what exactly am I not hiding, she asked. Liam didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out. His hand found her wrist. Not forceful, but firm. Zara stilled. The touch wasn't sudden this time. It wasn't a surprise. It was deliberate. You're not afraid, he said quietly. Zara's breath slowed. No, she replied. A beat passed. Then Liam stepped closer. The space between them disappeared. You should be, he murmured. Zara didn't pull away. Didn't break eye contact. Of you, she asked softly. Liam's grip on her wrist tightened, just slightly. Of what this is becoming, he said. The words lingered. Heavier than expected. Because this wasn't just attraction anymore. It was something else. Something harder to define. Zara's gaze flickered briefly, just for a second. And that was enough. Liam noticed. His hand shifted. Sliding from her wrist. To her waist. Holding her there. Zara inhaled sharply. But didn't step back. Didn't stop him. Her mind screamed for control. For distance. For clarity. But her body didn't move. You're playing a dangerous game, Liam said, his voice lower now, closer. Zara swallowed. So are you, she replied. Another step. Another shift. Now. There was no space left. Liam's gaze dropped to her lips. Zara felt it. The pull. The moment tipping dangerously close to something irreversible. And for the first time, she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to stop it. That realization hit harder than anything else. Because this wasn't strategy anymore. This was loss of control. Liam's hand tightened slightly at her waist. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. Zara didn't speak. Didn't move. And that silence was louder than any answer. The moment stretched. Tightened. Balanced on the edge of something neither of them could undo. Then a voice cut through it. Enough. Zara stepped back instantly. Liam's hand dropped. Noah stood at the edge of the veranda. His gaze was darker than she had ever seen it. Not curious. Not controlled. Angry. You've lost control, Noah said. Liam let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair as he stepped away. Or maybe, he replied, you're just realizing you never had it. The tension snapped. Sharp. Immediate. Zara felt it ripple between them. Not rivalry. Not competition. Something deeper. Something dangerous. This isn't a game anymore, Noah said quietly. Zara's gaze shifted between them. It never was, she replied. Silence fell. For a moment, none of them moved. Then Zara stepped back further. Creating distance. Reclaiming space. Her breath steadied. Her expression hardened. Because now she understood something clearly. She had stepped too close. Too fast. And for a brief moment, she had almost lost herself in it. That couldn't happen again. Be careful, Noah said, his voice quieter now, but no less intense. Zara met his gaze. You should take your own advice, she replied. Then she turned and walked away. This time, she didn't slow down. Didn't hesitate. Because now, the game had changed again. This wasn't just manipulation. It wasn't just control. It was something far more dangerous. Because the line she had been dancing on was starting to disappear. And if she wasn't careful, she wouldn't just lose the game. The storm didn't come with thunder. It came with silence. For 2 days, the mansion had been unusually calm. No open confrontations. No careless remarks at the table. No lingering touches in hidden corners. But Zara knew better. This wasn't peace. This was pressure. Something was building. She stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection as her fingers tightened around the edge of the sink. The air felt too still, too heavy, like it was waiting for something to break. Her thoughts had not been her own for days. Liam. Noah. Ethan. Truths she could not ignore. Lines she had nearly crossed. And now, her body was betraying her. She exhaled sharply, closing her eyes for a moment. No. It couldn't be. But deep down, she already knew. Her hand moved slowly, almost hesitantly, toward the small object resting on the counter. The test. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. She couldn't tell. When she finally opened her eyes, her world shifted. 2 lines. Zara's breath left her slowly. Not in shock. Not in panic. In realization. She was pregnant. The silence that followed was louder than anything she had ever heard. Her fingers trembled slightly, though her face remained composed. But inside, everything collided. Time. Memory. Moments she had carefully controlled. Moments she had almost lost control. Her heart pounded harder now. Faster. Unsteady. Because there was only one question that mattered. When? Her mind raced, piecing together timelines she had never expected to matter. Her wedding night. Her distance. And then. The moments after. The tension. The closeness. The almost. Her breath caught sharply. No. Nothing had happened. Not fully. Not enough. But doubt. Doubt was more dangerous than truth. Because doubt destroyed certainty. Zara stepped back from the sink slowly, her reflection staring back at her with unfamiliar intensity. This was not part of the plan. Nothing about this was. A sharp knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Zara. Ethan. Her heart skipped. I'll be out in a minute, she said, her voice steady despite everything. She grabbed the test quickly, hiding it before opening the door. Ethan stood there, his expression calm, but his eyes searching. You've been in there a while, he said. Zara forced a faint smile. Just needed a moment. He studied her for a second longer than usual. You don't look well. I'm fine. The answer came too quickly. Ethan noticed. Of course he did. But he didn't press. You should rest, he said quietly. Zara nodded once. I will. But she knew she wouldn't. Because now, rest was impossible. Later that evening, the dining table was quieter than usual. Too quiet. Zara sat beside Ethan, her posture composed, her expression calm, but her mind was anything but. Every glance felt heavier. Every silence louder. Liam was watching her again. But this time, there was something different in his gaze. Less playful. More intense. Noah noticed too. He always did. You're distracted, Liam said suddenly. Zara didn't look up. I'm tired. Liam leaned back slightly, studying her. That's not what it looks like. Zara lifted her gaze slowly. And what does it look like? Liam's eyes held hers. Like something changed. The words hit closer than they should have. Zara didn't respond. Because she couldn't. Not without revealing something. Noah's gaze shifted between them, sharp and observant. You've been distant, he added. Zara let out a quiet breath. Maybe I just needed space. Liam's smile faded slightly. From us. Zara held his gaze. From everything. Silence followed. Heavy. Unsettling. Ethan hadn't spoken. Not once. But Zara felt it. His awareness. His quiet observation. And for the first time, it made her uneasy. Because Ethan didn't interrupt. Didn't accuse. Didn't react. He simply watched. And somehow, that was worse. That night, Zara sat alone in the dim light of her room, the test resting on the table in front of her. She hadn't moved it. Hadn't touched it again. Because touching it made it real. Her hand rested lightly over her stomach. Not out of instinct. Not yet. But out of uncertainty. This changed everything. Her plan. Her control. Her position in this house. And most dangerously, her connection to all three men. Her breath slowed. Because now, the game wasn't just emotional. It was real. Permanent. Unavoidable. And somewhere in the mansion, two men were already watching her differently. Sensing it. Waiting. Zara's eyes closed slowly. Because she knew what was coming. Questions. Suspicion. Conflict. And one truth she could not escape. No matter how careful she had been. No matter how controlled she thought she was. The mansion woke to tension. It moved through the halls like a quiet infection, unseen, unspoken, but undeniable. Even the light felt different that morning, sharper against the marble, colder against the glass. Zara felt it the moment she opened her eyes. Or perhaps it had never left. She hadn't slept. Not truly. Her thoughts had circled the same question over and over again until it lost meaning and became something heavier, something she could not name, but could not escape. The test still lay where she had left it. 2 lines. Unforgiving. Zara sat at the edge of the bed, her fingers resting loosely in her lap, her gaze unfocused. For the first time since she had stepped into this house, she felt something unfamiliar pressing against her control. Not fear. Not regret. Uncertainty. A soft movement beside her pulled her back. Ethan. He was already awake. Watching her. How long have you been up? He asked quietly. Zara didn't answer immediately. Then. A while. His gaze didn't shift. You didn't sleep. It wasn't a question. Zara forced a faint smile. I'll survive. Ethan studied her a moment longer. Then. You don't have to. The words were simple. But they lingered. Zara looked away. That kind of concern was dangerous. I'm fine, she said. Ethan didn't respond. But he didn't believe her either. The dining table. The silence was worse than the questions. Zara took her seat beside Ethan, her posture composed, her expression carefully neutral. Across from her, Liam was already watching. Not subtly. Not playfully. Intently. Noah sat further down the table, his gaze lowered at first, until it wasn't. Then it lifted. And found her. Held. The tension snapped into place. You look tired, Liam said. Zara didn't look up. Then I suppose I should rest more. Liam leaned forward slightly. That's not what I meant. Zara lifted her gaze. And what did you mean? Liam's eyes didn't leave hers. You look like something's changed. The words landed too close. Zara's breath slowed. You seem very interested in me lately, she replied. A faint smile touched his lips. Shouldn't I be? Zara didn't answer. Because across the table, Noah was watching them. Not with curiosity. Not with amusement. With calculation. You've been distant, Noah said. Zara's gaze shifted to him. Have I? Noah's expression didn't change. You're not as careful today. The same observation. From both of them. Zara's pulse shifted. And yet, she said calmly, you're both still watching. A pause. Liam leaned back slightly, amused. Noah didn't move. Ethan still hadn't spoken. But Zara felt it again. That quiet awareness. That steady observation. And this time, it made her uneasy. Later that day, she couldn't stay inside. The walls felt too close. The silence too loud. Zara stepped into the garden, her breath finally loosening as the open air brushed against her skin. For a moment. Just a moment. She felt like she could think. Until. You're avoiding us. Zara closed her eyes briefly. Then turned. Noah. He stood a few steps away, his presence still, controlled. I'm not avoiding anything, she said. Noah stepped closer. You are, he replied. And it's new. Zara crossed her arms slightly. People change. Noah's gaze sharpened. Not that quickly. Silence stretched. Zara held his gaze. You're looking for something, she said. I'm confirming something, he corrected. A pause. And what is that? Noah didn't answer immediately. Then. You're hiding something. Zara's breath slowed. We all are. Noah shook his head once. Not like this. The certainty in his voice unsettled her more than she expected. You're different, he continued. More distracted. Less controlled. Zara let out a soft breath. Maybe I'm just tired. Noah stepped closer. Now. There was no space left between them. His gaze dropped briefly. Not to her face. Lower. Then back up. Zara's heart slammed against her chest. He noticed. Not everything. But enough. You should be careful, he said quietly. Zara held his gaze. You've said that before. Noah's expression didn't change. And you haven't listened. A pause. Then. His voice dropped. What happens when the game stops being yours to control? The question lingered. Zara stepped back. Creating distance. Then I adapt, she said. Noah watched her. For a long moment. Then. Make sure you do, he replied. That night. The house felt heavier again. Zara stood alone in her room, her hand resting lightly against her stomach. Not out of instinct. Not yet. But out of awareness. Everything had shifted. Her plan. Her control. Her position in this house. And the way they looked at her. They knew something was different. They just didn't know what. Not yet. Zara exhaled slowly, her gaze hardening. Good. Because the longer they didn't know, the more control she had. But deep down, she knew. This wouldn't stay hidden forever. And when it came out, everything would break. The storm finally broke that night. Not with raised voices. Not with violence. But with a truth that could no longer stay hidden. Zara stood in the study, her hands resting against the edge of the desk, her breathing uneven despite the calm she tried to hold onto. She hadn't planned to tell him like this. Not yet. Not when everything was already slipping. But some truths refused to wait. Behind her. The door opened. Ethan entered quietly, his presence filling the room in a way that was no longer subtle. He closed the door slowly. Deliberately. "I was looking for you," he said. Zara didn't turn immediately. "I needed to think," she replied. A pause. Then. "You've been needing that a lot lately." There was no accusation in his voice. But there was something else. Awareness. Zara turned then. Slowly. Carefully. Ethan was watching her. Not like before. Not calmly. Not passively. This time. He was looking for something. "You've been different," he continued. Zara said nothing. "You avoid questions," he added. "You disappear when things get too quiet." A pause. "And you don't look at me the same way." The words landed heavier than she expected. Zara's chest tightened. "That's not true," she said. Ethan held her gaze. "It is." Silence stretched between them. Then. Zara exhaled slowly. "There are things you don't understand," she said. Ethan's expression hardened slightly. "Then help me understand." A pause. Zara looked away. Because this was the moment. The point where everything changed. "I didn't come here for you." The words fell into the room like a stone. Ethan didn't react immediately. "What does that mean?" he asked quietly. Zara's fingers tightened slightly against the desk. "It means," she said, her voice steady but low, "this marriage wasn't about love." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "Then what was it about?" Zara closed her eyes briefly. "Then." She answered. "Your family." The truth settled slowly. Deliberately. Ethan leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. "And what about them?" he asked. Zara's gaze lifted again. "They destroyed mine." The room seemed to shift. For the first time. There was a crack. Not in the tension. In him. "What are you talking about?" Ethan asked. Zara stepped away from the desk. 3 years ago," she said, her voice quieter now, more distant, "my father lost everything." Ethan's gaze sharpened. "Your family was involved," she continued. A pause. "Your brothers." Silence. Ethan's expression darkened. "That's not possible," he said. Zara let out a faint, humorless breath. "It is." Another pause. "And you married me, for revenge?" he asked. Zara didn't answer. Because she didn't need to. Ethan's jaw tightened. "How long?" he asked. Zara swallowed. "From the beginning." The words hit harder this time. Ethan looked away briefly. Not in anger. Not yet. In something deeper. "You used me," he said. Zara stepped forward. "I didn't expect." "Don't," he cut in sharply. The first crack in his control. Zara stilled. Ethan looked at her again. "You didn't expect what?" he asked. Zara's voice faltered for the first time. "That it would become complicated." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Complicated," he repeated. "Is that what this is to you?" Zara shook her head slightly. "No." A pause. "It's more than that now." Ethan's gaze didn't soften. "Is it?" Zara held his eyes. "Yes." Silence. Then. She said it. "I'm pregnant." The world stopped. Ethan didn't move. Didn't breathe. For a moment. There was nothing. Then. "What?" Zara's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "I found out yesterday." Ethan's gaze dropped briefly. Then lifted again. "And you're telling me now?" he asked. Zara nodded. "I didn't know how." A pause. Then. The question. The one she had been avoiding. Is it mine? The words cut deeper than anything else. Zara's breath caught. Yes. She didn't hesitate. Because despite everything, that part was true. Ethan held her gaze. Searching. For a long moment. He said nothing. Then. He looked away. The silence that followed was unbearable. Zara stepped forward. Ethan. Don't. His voice was quiet. But final. Zara stopped. I need time, he said. The words were simple. But they created distance. Real distance. The mansion did not sleep that night. It waited. Zara remained in the study long after Ethan left, the silence around her growing heavier with every passing minute. The confession had changed everything. What had once been a controlled game was now exposed, raw, and irreversible. And Ethan. He had walked away. Not in anger. Not in rage. But in something far worse. Distance. Zara exhaled slowly, her fingers curling slightly at her sides. That kind of silence didn't explode. It lingered. It cut. A sudden crash echoed from the far end of the house. Zara's head snapped up. Another sound followed, louder this time. Glass shattering. Voices. Raised. Her heart skipped. It had begun. Without hesitation, she moved toward the door, stepping into the corridor just as another shout broke through the silence. Say it again. Liam. Zara moved faster now, her steps echoing as she followed the sound toward the main hall. When she reached it, the scene before her had already erupted. A shattered glass lay scattered across the floor. A chair overturned. The air thick with tension. Liam stood at the center, his posture rigid, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. Noah stood opposite him. Still. Controlled. But his eyes. Burned. You heard me, Noah said quietly. Liam laughed. But there was no humor in it. You think you can control this, he snapped. You think you've been in control this whole time. Noah didn't move. I think, he said, you've been reckless. Liam took a step forward. And you've been hiding, he shot back. Pretending you're above everything while you pull strings behind the scenes. Zara remained at the edge of the room. Watching. Listening. Because this was no longer subtle. This was war. You crossed a line, Noah said. Liam let out a sharp breath. And you didn't, he challenged. You think I don't know what you've been doing? Noah's expression didn't change. You're not thinking clearly, he replied. I'm thinking exactly as I should, Liam said. For once. The tension snapped tighter. You were supposed to handle him, Liam added, his voice lowering. Not drag this out. Zara's breath stilled. There it was. The truth. Noah's gaze darkened slightly. I handled it, he said. Liam shook his head. No, he said. You weakened him. A pause. You didn't finish it. The words hung in the air like a blade. Zara's chest tightened. Because now. There was no doubt. No more uncertainty. They had done this. Together. You think killing him would have solved everything? Noah asked. Liam's silence answered for him. That was all it took. The room shifted. Because now. The truth wasn't hidden anymore. It was spoken. You were always the cautious one, Liam continued, his tone sharpening. Always thinking ahead, always calculating. He stepped closer. But this, he added. This was your mistake. Noah's gaze didn't waver. She's your mistake, he said. Zara felt the shift immediately. Liam's attention snapped toward her. For a moment. Everything stopped. Then. His expression changed. Not anger. Something darker. Don't bring her into this, he said quietly. Noah didn't respond. But his gaze remained steady. She changed everything, he said. Liam shook his head. No, he said. She just revealed it. The words landed harder than expected. Because they were true. Zara stepped forward then. Not hesitant. Not uncertain. Intentional. Both men turned to her. The room held its breath. You should stop, she said. Her voice was calm. Controlled. But it carried. Liam let out a soft breath. You shouldn't be here, he said. Zara didn't move. I already am. A pause. Noah watched her carefully now. You heard, he said. It wasn't a question. Zara held his gaze. Yes. Silence. Then. Everything shifted. Because now. There was no pretending. No more games. Only truth. Liam ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tightening. Well, he muttered. That simplifies things. Zara's eyes sharpened. Does it? Liam looked at her. Really looked at her. You think this changes anything? He asked. Zara didn't hesitate. Yes. A pause. Because now, she continued, you don't get to pretend you didn't do it. Noah's expression hardened. You don't understand everything, he said. Zara stepped closer. Then explain it, she challenged. Silence. Neither of them spoke. Because there was nothing to explain. Not without admitting everything. Liam let out a quiet laugh. See, he said. That's the problem. Zara's gaze didn't waver. You made a mistake, she said. Noah's eyes darkened. No, he replied. We made a decision. The difference mattered. Zara felt it. Then you'll face the consequences, she said. Liam's smile returned. Slow. Dangerous. Is that a threat? He asked. Zara held his gaze. No, she said. A beat. It's a promise. The room fell silent again. Because now. There was no tension left. Only inevitability. Liam stepped back slowly. This isn't over, he said. Noah didn't respond. But his gaze remained fixed on Zara. Heavy. Unyielding. Then. He turned. And walked away. Liam followed shortly after. Leaving Zara alone in the center of the room. The shattered glass still at her feet. The tension still lingering in the air. But something had changed. Something final. Because now. The truth wasn't hidden. The lines weren't blurred. The game wasn't quiet. It was open. And from this point forward, there would be no more control. Only consequences. Zara exhaled slowly, her gaze hardening as she turned away. Because she knew what came next. And she was ready. The house did not recover from the night before. It fractured. By morning, the tension had settled into something colder, sharper, no longer hidden behind polite silence or controlled distance. The servants avoided eye contact. Doors closed more quietly. Even the walls seemed to hold on to what had been said, what had been revealed. Nothing was the same. Zara stood by the window in her room, her arms folded tightly as her gaze lingered over the grounds. The world outside remained untouched, orderly, calm, almost mocking in its stillness. Inside. Everything was unraveling. Behind her, the door opened. She didn't turn. She already knew. You heard everything. Ethan's voice was quiet. But not distant. Zara closed her eyes briefly. Then faced him. Yes. There was no reason to lie anymore. Ethan remained at the doorway, his posture rigid, his expression controlled, but his eyes. They held something new. Not confusion. Not doubt. Certainty. I always suspected, he said slowly. Zara's chest tightened. But hearing it, he continued, his voice lowering, is different. She nodded once. It is. Silence stretched between them. Then Ethan moved forward. Not toward her, but past her. Stopping near the window. They wanted me out of the way, he said. Not dead. Zara watched him carefully. You're not sure of that, she said. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Because she was right. They miscalculated, he added. A pause. They always do. Zara stepped closer. And now? Ethan's gaze remained fixed outside. Now, he said quietly, they'll try to control what's left. Zara's breath slowed. And you'll let them? Ethan finally turned. His eyes met hers. No. The answer came without hesitation. For the first time. There was no doubt in him. Zara felt it. The shift. Not just awareness. Resolve. Before she could speak, a shout echoed from the lower floor. Sudden. Then. A crash. Zara's heart skipped. Ethan's expression changed instantly. They both moved at the same time. The main hall. A broken table. A chair overturned. The air thick with something violent. Liam stood at the center. Breathing heavily. His knuckles red. Across from him. Noah. But this time. He wasn't standing. He was on the floor. Blood stained the edge of his lip, a cut just beneath his eye already beginning to darken. One hand pressed lightly against his side as he pushed himself up slowly, his expression not one of pain, but fury. What did you do? Zara's voice cut through the chaos. Both men looked up. Liam's chest rose and fell unevenly, his gaze shifting between Zara and Ethan. He pushed it too far, he said. Noah let out a quiet breath as he steadied himself. You've always been weak, he said, his voice low but sharp. Liam stepped forward instantly. Say that again. Ethan moved between them. Enough. His voice wasn't loud. But it carried. Both men stilled. Zara watched closely now, her pulse steady despite the tension. Because this was the moment everything broke completely. Ethan didn't react. I was never weak, he replied calmly. Liam laughed. But there was no humor in it. No, he said. You just refused to see what we were doing. Ethan's gaze hardened. I saw enough. A pause. Just not soon enough. Noah stepped forward then, ignoring the blood, the tension, the distance. This ends now, he said. Liam turned to him sharply. You don't get to decide that. Noah's eyes darkened. I already have. The shift was immediate. Zara felt it. This wasn't anger anymore. This was final. Don't, Ethan said. But it was too late. Noah moved. Fast. His hand reached inside his jacket. Zara's breath caught. And then. A flash. A sharp sound. The room froze. Liam staggered. For a second. No one moved. Then. He collapsed. The sound of his body hitting the floor echoed through the hall. Zara's heart slammed violently against her chest. She stepped forward instinctively, but Ethan caught her arm, pulling her back just slightly. Noah. His voice was low. Controlled. But dangerous. Noah stood still. The weapon still in his hand. His breathing steady. His expression unchanged. He was going to destroy everything, Noah said. Zara's stomach tightened. He already did, she replied. Silence fell. Heavy. Unavoidable. Then. Distant voices. Approaching. Someone had called. Noah lowered the weapon slowly. For a moment, something passed between them. Not regret. Not remorse. Understanding. Then, he looked at Ethan. This was always going to happen, he said. Ethan didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. Noah dropped the weapon. And for the first time, he stepped back. Not as a brother, but as a man who had just ended something that could not be undone. Later, the mansion was no longer silent. Police filled the halls. Voices overlapped. Questions were asked. Statements taken. Liam was gone. Noah was taken. And just like that, the Mwakazi family had lost everything it once pretended to be. Zara stood at the far end of the corridor, her arms wrapped around herself, her mind still catching up to what had just happened. Ethan stood beside her. Silent. Still. Neither of them spoke. Because words could not fix this. Could not undo it. Could not make sense of it. Zara exhaled slowly. It's over. Ethan didn't look at her. No, he said quietly. A pause. It's just beginning. Zara's breath caught. Because he was right. The truth had come out. The war had ended. But what remained was everything they had broken to get there. And that would take far longer to face. The mansion felt hollow. Not quiet, hollow. As though something had been torn out of its foundation, leaving behind space that no amount of silence could fill. The echoes of what had happened still clung to the walls, lingering in every corridor, every room, every breath Zara took. Liam was gone. Noah was gone. And yet, nothing felt resolved. 3 days had passed. 3 days of questions, statements, and carefully controlled narratives. The authorities had taken Noah into custody. The story had already begun shaping itself outside the gates: family dispute, internal conflict, tragic escalation. But inside, the truth remained untouched. Unspoken. Unhealed. Zara stood by the window again. It had become a habit. Or maybe a refuge. Her hand rested lightly over her stomach now, not out of uncertainty anymore, but awareness. The life growing within her had become something real in a way nothing else could deny. And with that reality came something heavier. Responsibility. Behind her, the door opened. Softly. She didn't turn. She knew. Ethan. His presence had changed. Not in the way he carried himself physically, but in the way he held space. He no longer felt like a man trying to exist quietly within chaos. He felt like someone who had stepped out of it. You should rest, he said. Zara let out a faint breath. I've had enough of that advice. A small pause. Ethan moved further into the room. You haven't been sleeping, he said. Zara turned then. And you have. Ethan didn't answer. Because they both knew. Silence stretched between them, not tense, but fragile. Zara studied him carefully. There was something different in his eyes now. Not anger. Not distance. Something deeper. I meant what I said, she began. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. About what? Zara stepped closer. Everything. A pause. My reasons, she continued. My past. The way I came into this house. Ethan exhaled slowly. I know. Zara's chest tightened. But that doesn't change what you did, he added. The words landed exactly where they were meant to. Zara nodded. I know that too. Another silence followed. He wasn't wrong. Nothing she had done could be undone. Nothing she had hidden could be erased. I didn't expect you to forgive me, she said quietly. Ethan's gaze shifted slightly, not away, but inward. Good, he replied. Because I don't. The honesty didn't hurt as much as she thought it would. Because it wasn't cruel. It wasn't harsh. It was real. Zara nodded once. That's fair. A pause. Then. She said the one thing she had been holding on to. But I didn't lie about everything. Ethan looked at her. What does that mean? Zara's hand moved slightly, resting over her stomach again. This, she said softly. This wasn't part of the plan. Ethan's gaze dropped briefly. Then returned. I know. Zara's breath caught slightly. You do. Ethan nodded once. You wouldn't use something like that as a strategy. The certainty in his voice surprised her. After everything, she said, you still believe that? Ethan held her gaze. I believe you chose something real, he replied. Zara felt something shift inside her. Not relief. Not forgiveness. Something quieter. Understanding. A pause settled between them. Then. Ethan spoke again. I don't know what this is anymore. Zara didn't interrupt. I don't know what's real, he continued. What started as a lie, what changed, what didn't? Zara took a slow breath. Neither do I. The admission felt heavier than anything else she had said. Because it was the truth. For once. Uncomplicated. Unfiltered. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then. He moved. Not toward her. Not away. But closer. Just enough to close part of the distance between them. That doesn't make this easier, he said. Zara shook her head slightly. I know. Another pause. Then. Ethan's voice softened. Just slightly. But it makes it honest. Zara felt it then. The shift. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something opening. Something possible. I'm not asking you to forget, she said. Ethan nodded. Good. A faint breath passed between them. Because I won't. Zara gave a small, almost invisible nod. I wouldn't want you to. Silence settled again. But this time. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It was uncertain. Fragile. And somehow. That felt more real than anything else. Zara stepped back slightly. I'm staying, she said. Ethan's gaze didn't shift. I know. A pause. But not because of the plan, she added. Ethan held her eyes. Then why? Zara exhaled slowly. Because I don't want to walk away from what this could become. The words hung between them. Ethan didn't respond immediately. But something in his expression changed. Not softened. But steadied. Then stay, he said. Zara's breath caught slightly. But understand this, he added. A pause. This won't be easy. Zara met his gaze. I don't expect it to be. Another silence. Then. Ethan nodded. And just like that. Something shifted. Not healed. Not fixed. But started. Zara turned back toward the window, her reflection faint in the glass. Outside. The world remained calm. Inside. Everything had changed. And yet. For the first time. There was something else there. Not revenge. Not control. Something quieter. Something uncertain. Something real. Time did not heal the house. It softened it. Weeks passed, and the Mwakazi estate slowly settled into a quieter rhythm. The echoes of what had happened no longer rang through every corridor, but they had not disappeared either. They lingered, in the spaces between conversations, in the pauses that came too often, in the way people chose their words more carefully now. Nothing was forgotten. It was simply carried. Zara learned to live with it. Not easily. Not perfectly. But honestly. She moved through the house without the same tension that had once defined her every step. There were no more hidden games, no more calculated glances, no more deliberate traps. The war had ended. But its scars remained. And so did the work of rebuilding. Ethan had changed. Not dramatically. Not in a way that others would immediately notice. But Zara saw it. He no longer sat at the edges of conversations. He didn't allow silence to speak for him anymore. And more importantly, he no longer looked at himself the way his brothers once did. But the greatest change was quieter. More personal. He had started trying. The therapy room. The room was simple. Minimal. Intentional. Zara stood near the wall, her arms loosely folded, her gaze fixed on Ethan as he gripped the parallel bars in front of him. His hands were steady. His shoulders tense. His legs still. But not lifeless. Again, the therapist said calmly. Ethan exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening slightly as he shifted his weight forward. Zara watched closely. Because this wasn't easy. Every attempt was a fight. Not just physical. But mental. Ethan pushed. His body responded slowly, reluctantly. His arms strained. His breathing grew heavier. And then he lifted. Just slightly. But it wasn't enough. His balance faltered. His body gave in. And he collapsed back into the chair. Silence filled the room. Zara didn't move. Didn't rush forward. Because she understood something now. This wasn't about saving him. This was about letting him fight. Ethan let out a quiet breath, running a hand through his hair. Again, he said. The therapist hesitated briefly. You should rest. Ethan shook his head. No. Zara felt it then. Not frustration. Determination. Again, he repeated. The therapist nodded. Zara stepped closer this time. Not interrupting. Just present. Ethan placed his hands on the bars again. His breathing steadied. His focus sharpened. Then he pushed. Harder this time. His body trembled slightly as he forced himself upward, every muscle resisting, every movement demanding more than he had. For a moment. He held it. Not perfectly. Not easily. But he held it. Zara's breath caught. Because this wasn't just physical. This was everything. Ethan's jaw tightened as he tried to steady himself, his weight shifting unevenly, his balance fragile. Then his leg moved. Just slightly. But enough. Enough to prove something. Enough to change something. Then he fell again. This time harder. The sound echoed in the room. The therapist moved instantly. But Zara stayed still. Ethan remained where he had fallen, his breathing uneven, his body tense. For a moment. It looked like he might stop. That he might give up. That he might let the weight of it all pull him back down. Zara stepped forward then. Not rushing. Not panicking. She crouched slightly beside him, her voice quiet. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Ethan didn't look at her. I know. A pause. Then why are you doing this? Silence. Then he answered. Because I need to prove it to myself. Zara's chest tightened. She nodded once. That's enough. Ethan finally looked at her. And for the first time, there was no doubt in his eyes. Only resolve. He pushed himself up again. Slower this time. More controlled. Zara stepped back. Giving him space. Letting him stand on his own. And this time, he didn't fall immediately. He stood. Not steady. Not strong. But standing. Zara felt it. The shift. In him. And in her. Because this was the moment everything changed. Not the past. Not the pain. But what came after. Ethan let out a slow breath, his grip tightening on the bars as he steadied himself. Then, very quietly, he said it. I'm not done. Zara smiled faintly. Good. Because neither was she. That evening, the mansion felt different again. Not heavy. Not hollow. Something else. Zara stood by the window, her hand resting over her stomach, her reflection softer now, less guarded. Behind her, Ethan entered. This time, without hesitation. You stayed, he said. Zara turned. I said I would. Ethan nodded. A pause settled between them. Then, he spoke. I don't forgive you. Zara's breath slowed. I know. Another pause. But I don't want you to leave either. The words were simple. But they carried weight. Zara held his gaze. Then I won't. Silence followed. Not uncomfortable. Not heavy. Just real. Because this wasn't perfect. It wasn't healed. But it was something. And for now, that was enough. The morning of the second wedding arrived quietly. No grand announcement. No spectacle. No whispers crawling through the air like before. Just calm. The Mwakazi estate looked different now. Not in structure. Not in wealth. But in presence. The tension that once filled every corner had faded into something softer, something that didn't pretend perfection, but no longer carried hostility. It wasn't a house of power anymore. It was a house that had survived. Zara stood in front of the mirror, her fingers resting lightly against the fabric of her dress. This time, it felt different. No hidden agenda. No revenge. No performance. Just choice. The dress was simpler than the first one. Less dramatic. More real. Her reflection stared back at her, not the woman who had walked into this house weeks ago, carrying secrets and intentions she believed she could control. But someone else. Someone who had broken things. Lost things. Learned things. And somehow stayed. A soft knock came at the door. Zara. Her breath paused slightly. Ethan. She turned slowly. Come in. The door opened. And for a moment, everything stilled. Because Ethan wasn't sitting. He was standing. Not perfectly. Not without effort. But standing. Zara's eyes filled instantly. Not because she hadn't believed he could. But because she knew what it had taken. Every fall. Every failure. Every moment he could have stopped. But didn't. He took a slow step forward. Unsteady. Careful. But his. Zara moved toward him instinctively. But he stopped her gently. Wait. His voice was quiet. But steady. Zara froze. Because she understood. This mattered. Ethan took another step. Then another. Slow. Measured. Every movement deliberate. Every step earned. Until finally, he reached her. Close enough. And this time, she didn't hold back. Her hands found his. Steadying. Not carrying. Their eyes met. No words. Not yet. Because everything that needed to be said had already been lived. The ceremony. It wasn't large. It wasn't extravagant. But it was full. Not of guests. Not of spectacle. But of meaning. The aisle was the same. The space was the same. But everything else had changed. Zara stood at one end. Ethan at the other. No chair. No whispers. No judgment. Just silence. And then she walked. Slowly. Gracefully. Not toward a man she didn't understand. But toward someone she had fought beside. Broken beside. Chosen. And when she reached him, he didn't step back. He didn't falter. He stood. Not because he was healed. Not because everything was fixed. But because he chose to. Just like she did. Their hands met again. This time. Without hesitation. I don't have a perfect promise, Ethan said quietly. Zara's lips trembled slightly. Neither do I. A small breath passed between them. I don't know what this becomes, he continued. Zara nodded. But I know I want to find out. Silence. Then Zara spoke. I choose you. The words were simple. But this time, they meant everything. Ethan held her gaze. Then, softly, I choose you too. No grand applause. No dramatic moment. Just something quiet. Something real. Something earned. Final scene. The sun dipped low over the estate, casting warm light across the grounds as the small gathering slowly faded into the evening. Zara stood beside Ethan, her hand resting gently over her stomach, her other hand intertwined with his. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Because this was enough. Not perfect. Not untouched. But real. And as they stood there, side by side, there was no past to undo. No pain to erase. No truth to hide. Only something ahead. Uncertain. But theirs. Ethan shifted slightly, steadying himself. Zara didn't move to help. Because she didn't need to. And neither did he. For the first time, they weren't standing because they had to. They were standing because they chose to.